Right, thanks everyone coming out this Sunday afternoon in Spanish for Utah. You're welcome to give us your correspondence, feedback, and comments by emails at utahchristians@gmail.com. We also have a website, utahchristians.org. Everything is inspired by the teachings of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, who is the founder and chair of the International Society for Christian Consciousness. Om Agnati Manandasyam Ganagana Saraya Chatsuvarim Vinitam Yanatashmai Sri Gurave Maha Sri Chaitanya Vistam Stapitam Yana Bhutale Sayam Rupakaramya Tadati Sav Parantikam. I'd like to talk today about what is your story. We all have a story based on how we see ourselves, how we see our future. The story comes from how we were raised, what people have said about us, from our own successes and failures. For many people, I think you'll agree with me today, the story is negative. I've been hurt too much. I could never love again. I'm at a disadvantage. I'm less than. I could never be successful. I had big dreams, but I lack the talent, the resources, and the connections. You know what's stopping you? It's your story. You're being limited by what you're telling yourself. What you believe about yourself, how you see your circumstances, the story that you've written, that's more powerful even than the facts. You can be incredibly gifted, have a great personality, but if you tell yourself you're average, you don't have much to offer, then guess what? Your gifts will not come out like they should. Krishna says that He has mercy for your mistakes. He's not holding your past against you. But if you tell yourself that you're washed up, you've blown it too many times, your best is behind you, then you're going to miss the new things that Krishna has in store. So our question tonight is the story that you're telling yourself keeping you from rising higher? And if so, our suggestion is, why don't you tell yourself a new story? I ran across this quote: stories are the muscle of our hearts, the marker of our identity. Each of us have stories that underlie our behaviors, our beliefs, and our belongings. In a sense, your story is what makes you who you are, guides you to where you want to go. Stories can either make us or break us. They're powerful forces that can either lift us up or drag us down during the stormy seas of life. Our stories can make us buoyant, or our stories can drag us down like a rock around our neck. Whenever relationships get hard, whenever we encounter problems in life, the stories that lurk below the surface of our souls determine how we react. Our stories anchor us to a root identity. Our stories form the fabric of our relationships and responses. As we read in the great epic story of the Mahabharata, King Yudhishthira, the eldest of the Pandava brothers, lamented to a nearby sage named Vrihadashva. Yudhishthira folded his hands and he said, "O wise one, due to the nefarious schemes of evil-minded gamblers, I have been deprived of my wealth and kingdom. Now my brothers are suffering and my wife has been humiliated. We are all exiled for 13 years. My mind burns with the remembrance of my enemies' cruel words and my own foolishness. And I feel sorrow to think of my relatives and subjects. Have you ever heard of any king or prince more unfortunate than myself?" Vrihadashva replied that in fact he did know the story of an ancient king who had ruled the Nishada race. He too had been defeated at dice by his brother and exiled to the forest with his wife. That king's name was Nala. His wife's name was Damayanti. This story, the sage said, would make Yudhishthira's story seem like a walk in the park. Nala and Damayanti's story of woe was worse than Yudhishthira's story. After losing everything and being sent to the forest, the king and his wife had also been separated, and both had wandered alone, facing many challenges and many enemies for years before finally reunited and regaining their kingdom back. You, on the other hand, the sage said to Yudhishthira, are here with your brothers, with your wife, surrounded by the Brahmins, headed by Domya. Don't have a pity party for yourself. Others, much worse off than you, have triumphed over their difficulties by taking shelter of Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of God. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. After which Yudhishthira felt much better about his own plight. The problem is that when we manufacture our own stories or hide from Krishna or God's story for our lives, we become paralyzed and powerless in the face of life's difficulties. We learn to live lies that cause us trouble. Loose threads trip us up. Life cuts us up and drags us down. On the other hand, when our story merges with Krishna's story, when we allow what Krishna has written to invade our hearts and imprint our souls, when we live a Krishna-centered life, we emerge pure, fresh, with new confidence and humility, ready to take on the world. Stories are powerful agents of change. The language philosopher Ivan Illich said, for example, quote, neither revolution nor reformation can ultimately change a society. Rather, you must tell a new, powerful tale, one so persuasive that it sweeps away the old myths and becomes the preferred story, one so inclusive that it gathers all the bits of our past and our present into a coherent whole, one that even shines some light into the future so that we can take the next step forward. If you want to change a society, then you have to tell an alternative story. In his introduction to the Mahabharata, Krishna Dharma writes these words, welcome to a world where gods and heroes walk the earth, where virtuous kings lead the people, where our lifetimes are seen as simply one step along an eternal path leading to worlds of unending bliss. And he goes on, here is a story which will enthrall you and at the same time deliver profound lessons about life. It was first composed in Sanskrit about 5,000 years ago by Vyasadeva, a mystic residing in the Himalayas. Its central theme is the true story of the lives of 5 powerful kings, the Pandava brothers. Woven throughout the story, as we referred to Nala and Damayanti, are other tales. We meet sages, warrior kings, and a host of other colorful personalities. Among them all is Krishna, a divine incarnation, and as you will discover, the pivotal character in the book. It is in fact due to Krishna's presence that the work is revered as a sacred text. It does in fact contain the Bhagavad Gita, the Song of God, which Krishna spoke and which has become a spiritual treatise still to this day read by millions and millions of people. And Scripture says, Krishna, God, is the author and the finisher of your faith. Krishna has already written your story. Now the key is to get your story in line with his story. Krishna says that his plans for you are good. He plans to give you a future and a hope. He calls you a masterpiece, valuable, victorious, an overcomer. He said what was meant for your harm, he's turning to your good. Now you may have been through some bad breaks, some things that are unfair. Maya, the enemy, would love to author your story. Maya would love to rewrite what Krishna has written about you. But you need to take that pen back, cross out all those lies, tell yourself a new story. Krishna says he has beauty for ashes that'll pay you back for the wrongs. You wouldn't have woken up from your sleep this morning unless Krishna had awesome things out in front of you. Don't let circumstances, what didn't work out, what you think you don't have, convince you to live with the wrong story. That's setting the limits for your life. Don't tell yourself that you'll never be successful, that you'll never get out of debt, that you'll never meet the right person. Tell yourself a new story. I'm made in the image of God. I'm crowned with favor. I'm a masterpiece. There's greatness in me. What I touch prospers and succeeds. Blessings are chasing me down. My latter days will be better than my former days. That's the story that Krishna has written about you. Was your story contradicting his story? Have you let people, circumstance, doubt, negativity rewrite your story? Our urging is don't let someone else become the author. Take that pen back, write yourself a new story. Alfred Adler, he tells an intriguing encounter which took place in the main train station in Vienna, Austria, back in the early 1930s. A well-dressed businessman got off the train, walking through the lobby. An alcoholic beggar stopped him and asked him for just enough money for one meal. The businessman said he did not usually respond to such requests, but he would on one condition. He said, "Tell me how an intelligent-looking person as you have allowed yourself to get into this situation." The beggar turned red in the face with anger. He said, "Listen, if you had happened to you what has happened to me, you wouldn't be asking that question. You would be asked exactly where I am. I never had a chance in life. The cards were stacked against me from the birth. I was one of several children. My mother died when I was young. My father was an abusive and a very cruel man. The state had to intervene, take my brothers and sisters and me away from him, put us in a government-run orphanage. We lived there for several years until World War I came. One night, a battle raged around our orphanage. The building caught fire. I had to flee into the night. I have never since seen any members of my family. I don't even know whether they're alive or dead. It's been that way my whole life. Every time I try to get on my feet, something knocks me down. If you had happened to you what happened to me, you wouldn't be so smug. You would be standing in these very same shoes." The businessman said, "It's interesting that you should say that, because as you tell your story, it parallels my story. I too was one of several children. My mother died. My father was a cruel and irresponsible man. I had to be taken away with my brothers and sisters, away from him. I too lived in an orphanage. It caught fire one night. I had to flee. Since that night, I've lost touch with all of my family. And yet, somehow, in all of that, I always felt I needed to fight back. I somehow felt that I was called to make the best of the circumstances. And I never, ever thought of myself as a victim." They began to talk more fully, and as you've already guessed, they were, in fact, blood brothers. They'd been separated for years by the accidents of war, and now, mysteriously, had bumped into one another again. Now, Dr. Adler uses this story to raise the question, why is it that we humans tell such opposite stories to the same set of circumstances? Here were two individuals who had the same genetic background, had had the same things happen to them, and yet one had allowed those events to knock him to the ground, while the other, like a sail tacking into the wind, had used the things coming against him to create an energy to move forward. Why did these two brothers, from the same set of circumstances, spin two such different stories? And when you get your story in line with what Krishna says, things are going to happen that you couldn't make happen on your own. Don't let the wrong story keep you from your greatness. Well, Caru, I can't get into management. I'm not that talented. I don't have that good of a personality. Who told you that? Where did that story come from? Could it be that that wrong story is keeping you from rising higher? I can't make A's in school. I'm not that smart. All I can make are C's. You have to realize the enemy has stolen the pen from you and is starting to rewrite your story. I can't break the addiction. I'll never get out of this neighborhood, never accomplish my dreams. It's too late for me. As long as you believe that story, that will be the reality of your life. Now, Krishna didn't create you just to get by, just to survive. He created you to excel, leave your mark. He said you're to reign in life, but victory starts in your thinking. Therefore it is said, be careful how you think, because your thoughts are going to run your life. Your story is setting the limits for your life. Do you think Krishna or God would ask you to do something and then not give you the ability to do it? You think he would choose you to be here in this time, this place in history, and not give you everything you need to live a victorious life, to overcome obstacles, to leave your mark? Now, when you tell Krishna what you can't do, Krishna, I can't get well. You saw the report. I can't start this business in the pandemic. I'm not that talented. I can't do anything significant. I come from the wrong family. Krishna then says to you what he said to all the saints of old. Who told you that? It was certainly not me, your creator. Who wrote your story? Who gave you your gifts? Who picked out your family? Who lined up your breaks? Who planned out your days? Me, the creator of millions of universes, the God who spoke worlds into existence. I'm your author. I've written your story. You're not doing life on your own. Go back to what God, your creator, says about you. Go back to what Krishna put in your heart. Go back to dreaming again, believing again, loving again. Don't let a wrong story limit your destiny. Don't believe the lie that says, just live with the sickness, the depression. You'll never get well. You'll never write that book. You'll never meet the right person. Just make it through life. How about telling yourself a new story? You can still accomplish your dreams. You can still get well. You can still meet someone awesome. You can still go to new levels. Delete that old story. Get rid of that limited thinking. What's stopping, that's what's stopping the new things that Krishna has in store. Now, in the Mahabharata, Krishna encourages the old blind king Dhritarashtra to follow Krishna's storyline for peace and prosperity. Krishna says, O king, your sons, headed by Duryodhana, are not considering morality or even profit. They're wicked and overcome by greed. They're being unfair towards even their own well-wishers, the Pandavas. Krishna says to the king, I don't think that peace would be so difficult to achieve. Let's just work it out between you and me. You should give an order, and your sons will have no choice but to follow it. On the other hand, the Pandavas never ignore my advice. So you set your sons on the path of peace, and I will do the same for the Pandavas. Simple, right? Consider everything very carefully, O king, Krishna continues. Even if you desire to rule the world, it's still better to establish peace with the Pandavas than to make them your enemies. They see you right now as a worshipful elder. They will wait on you and protect you, and even the gods will not be able to assail you. You will not find any better allies than the Pandavas. With them at your side, you would lead troops headed by Bhishma, Drona, Kripa, Karna, Ashwatthama, Yudhishthira, Bhima, Arjuna, and so many other great heroes. Where is the fool that would fight such warriors? The blind king sat with his head bowed. He couldn't look Krishna in the eye. Krishna's speech was, as he had expected, cutting and painfully true. He called for a drink of water as Krishna continued telling him the consequences that if Dhritarashtra's storyline does not follow Krishna's storyline, but instead he lets his son Duryodhana write the story. On the other hand, O king, what profit will there be in fighting the Pandavas? What merit do you see in arranging for so many people to die? Oh, best of the Bhartas, just imagine what you feel, what you will feel when you hear of the deaths on both sides. There's no question that all the men you see assembled here will not survive the war. They will slay each other, mercilessly influenced by anger. O Emperor, make the decision to rescue them from death. Save this world from disaster. So what do we learn from this speech of Krishna's to the old blind king? Well, if you don't change the story you're telling to yourself, you're going to live a life that doesn't make sense. You're going to live in paralysis, you're going to live in dysfunction, and you're going to end up seeing the destruction of everything that you hold dear. Therefore, our encouragement is, don't let a wrong story, what you've been through, what looks too big, what hasn't happened, convince you that you can't defeat your giants, you can't accomplish your dreams, you can't be healthy, successful, fulfilled. The enemy might. She may have gotten your pen. She's altering the story that Krishna wrote for you. Now get that pen back and cross out all those lies. And this all has to start in your own heart, in your own mind. Krishna is not going to force upon you his destiny, his favor, his blessings. You have to want to get into agreement with him. A teacher once had our class conduct an experiment with jumping fleas. The students put hundreds of fleas on the table and observed how they jumped. Then they took a large glass bowl, turned it upside down over the jumping fleas. Now, when the fleas jumped, they kept hitting the top of the container, getting a headache. Finally, they realized they couldn't jump any higher, so they measured their jumps. Later on, the teacher removed the container, but the fleas, interestingly enough, continued to jump only to that same height as if the container were still overhead. That's our parable of life. We too easily allow limitations to keep us down. We settle for less than is possible. We allow mediocrity to become the mean, the standard of our life. We end up not taking care of what Krishna has given us. I understand. Tough times come. Life can throw you a curveball now and then. But you may be in poverty, but don't let the poverty get in you. Don't develop a poor mindset where all you believe for is just enough to get by. Don't accept that as your destiny. Why? Because Krishna has an abundant life for you. He knows how to make rivers in the desert. He knows how to bring you out of struggle and lack, how to give you a bountiful, abundant life. Now, you can't let other people put their story on you. their defeat, their negativity, their limited vision. Don't let that keep you from believing that you can rise higher. People are not the author of your story. Krishna or God is. He called you. He anointed you. He put the dreams in your heart. Other people are not going to understand. They may try to talk you into watering down your dreams. No, keep the right story playing in your mind. Maybe the environment that you were raised in has tainted your story. The people you grew up around, or the people you're with now, don't believe for much except mediocrity. Now, you have to be the one to break out of that rut. Don't let their negative story ruin your life. Krishna wants you to go further. He has things in your future that are much greater than you can imagine. Now, get in agreement with him. Quit telling yourself that you're limited. You've gone as far as you can, that you're always going to struggle. Get yourself a new story. Have an abundant mentality. Lord, thank you that my cup runs over. Thank you that I live under the open windows of heaven. Lord, thank you that you take pleasure in prospering your devotees, that we will leave our mark in the world. How we were raised, what we saw modeled growing up, the environment that we're in now, it can create these boundaries in your mind to where we adapt to what's around us. Even though Krishna has all kinds of amazing things in store, if you tell yourself that you've reached your limits, you can't get well, you can't accomplish a dream, like those fleas, you'll miss the fullness of your destiny. Now, the story that you tell yourself is the story that's going to come to pass. Our encouragement is, the sky is the limit. Krishna has a big life for you, favor, opportunity, freedom, great relationships. All we have to do is our part and get in agreement with Krishna, tell ourselves a new story. You don't have to figure out how it's going to happen. All you have to do is believe. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. You may have all the reasons in the world to give yourself a negative story. You may be facing a challenge in your health, your finances, and relationships. It's easy to let yourself to be defeated by I can't do it thoughts. It's never going to work out thoughts playing over and over in your mind. That's when you have to dig down deep and say, no, I'm deleting that story. I will be the exception. I will get well. I will see my family restored. I will break this addiction. I will lend and not borrow. I will accomplish my God-given dreams. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare. You got to give Krishna something to work with. You can't have an old story and see the new things that he wants to do. Many times, our story, what we're telling ourselves, is putting limits on our life. This is where faith comes in. There will be up and downs, challenges, defeats, victories, successes, failures, but nothing will come up against you for which Krishna hasn't already got the solution. Krishna will never let his devotees get into a problem that he can't bring them out of. The key is, don't let that long story take root. In difficult times, when nothing's changing, it's taking longer than you thought, you have to keep telling yourself, this is not permanent, it did not come to stay, it came to pass. I'm an overcomer. Krishna always causes me to triumph. This is not going to stop me. Victory is headed my way. Finally here, I'll tell you about an experiment done in a high school district in California. The principal told 3 teachers that they were the most effective teachers in the district. They were chosen for a new program. And out of thousands of students, they were going to take the top 90 students, the smartest, the most talented, with the highest IQ. These 3 teachers would teach these 90 students in sections of 30 each at a faster pace. Teachers and students were so excited. They were told that they were the best in the district. And sure enough, at the end of the school year, these 3 classes had learned 30% more than the other students. They were 30% further along in math, reading, science. The experiment was a huge success. Then the principal informed the teachers that they didn't have the top 90 students in the district. They had just randomly chosen those students. Teachers felt pretty good, thinking they'd done an awesome job. Then the teacher informed them that they weren't the most effective teachers. They also had been randomly selected out of a hat. What's the point? When you tell yourself a different story, when you tell yourself that you're made in the image of God, smart, talented, favored, wise, anointed, creative, you're going to see new levels of your destiny. You may not realize it, but the only people we allow into the Spanish Fork Temple here, we have a very strict policy, are the smartest, the healthiest, the most talented, the most creative, the most attractive, the most generous, the most valuable, the most blessed people in the world. We have great confidence in you. What we're doing is trying to see you the way Krishna sees you. The only thing that's holding some people back is the story they're telling themselves. I'm not that talented, true. I'm not as smart as my cousin. I can't run a business like my friend. I can't face an audience like you do. Who knows what you could do if you start seeing yourself differently? Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Can I tell you, you're awesome, you're talented, you have a great personality, you're going to do something amazing. If you don't believe in yourself, it's going to limit your life. No, you're not better than anybody else, but you're not less than anyone else either. Tell yourself a new story. I'm valuable, favored, I'm attractive, I have a great personality, people like being around me. You have enough people in life against you. Don't be against yourself. Now, are you living with a limited mentality because of how you were raised, the environment you're in now? We're here to tell you tonight, the door is wide open. Krishna has awesome things in your future. Now do your part and make sure your story lines up with his story, because the story you tell yourself is the story that's going to come to pass. If you'll do this, healing is coming, freedom is coming, breakthroughs are coming. You're going to see favor, overcome obstacles, accomplish your dreams, and reach the fullness of your destiny in this life and next life. Go back to home, back to God. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So go ahead and stand up, and we'll do some chanting, surprise, surprise. Do we have a kirtan leader by any chance in this young man? Yes? Shri Radha Krishna Govindana Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govindana Ki Jai. Vrindavan.